Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Wednesday evening, the 6th of February, 2019. Tonight's topic is copper money. Now, a lot of people make a big deal out of whether gold and silver are money, and they insist they're money, and in fact, they get very offended if you say they're not money, because to a certain extent, that's the reason they believe that gold and silver are valuable. Because they're money, period. They've always been money. Well, actually, they were valuable before they were money. And tonight we're going to examine copper and whether copper is money. And we're going to apply the same tests to copper that we would apply to gold or silver. And remember where I come out on gold and silver, especially silver, that silver is not money because it fails the medium of exchange. People do not use it as a medium of exchange. They could, they don't, and therefore, as a practical matter, I call it dormant money. Now, we're going to go through the same analysis with copper, and you may be surprised where I come out on copper. But before we do that, then let's take a look at what our precious metals did during the day today. It was somewhat of a down day for gold and silver. Markets are pretty much flat. We've got a little gold news to go through, some crypto news. We're going to talk about the Trump State of the Union briefly and a couple of polls. One from the Smaulgld Game Changers, Mug Stackers from the Mug Brigade, and also one from CBS News. And compare the two polls. And then we've got some Moronica, and then we'll get into our copper discussion. So let's take a look at the gold price today, the silver price, and the gold-silver ratio. Well, gold went down a little bit. Went down $7, down over 0.5%. Still over that 1,300 mark. It's at $1,307 at the close, and it's at pretty much the same place right now in the aftermarkets. Silver. Well, silver fell a little bit more. Silver fell 17 cents. Down over 1.07% at $15.66. And what did that do to our gold-silver ratio? Well, you can bet went back up. There it is, the unsustainable gold-silver ratio that everyone talks about. And remember my big rationale why the gold-silver ratio is not 16 to 1 or 9 to 1. Because they both do not serve currently as money in any financial system. When the U.S. was on a bimetallic system, they did set the ratio at 15 to 1 initially, and then it was 16 to 1. They were both viewed at the time as being useful as money, and therefore they picked the relative rarity and somewhat the market price to decide that the price should be, or the ratio should be 16 to 1. Taking away their having the same usage as a medium of exchange, as money, store of value, so on, and putting them both out there as just metals, having whatever value the market may ascribe to them, well, gold has a much higher value, more than its relative rarity. Why? Because gold appears in the market to be more treasured. It has more use, more value as jewelry. It is more valued as investment. So a greater portion of the demand for gold goes into investment, whereas for silver it does not. Only 10-15% of silver is investment demand. You kind of could call that its monetary demand. But for gold, it's about 40-45%, and the rest of it is pretty much jewelry and a little industry. So the relative rarity becomes far less relevant when they have different uses. But when they were both money, you can say they're almost fungible. They're somewhat apples to apples, Macintosh to Red Delicious. But now they're somewhat apples to oranges. They're both not money in the same way. In some respects, you can say silver has been totally demonetized by, at least legally, as we've seen over the last few nights with the Golden Cross and the Silver Cross videos that we've done, whereas gold is being held by central banks, and central banks are buying gold, and that is all I need to know. Well, they are buying gold, not in large amounts, but central banks do buy but to a greater extent actually hold gold and they don't hold silver. So that's why your gold silver ratio, all this nonsense here from the silver pumpers, it's unsustainable. Now it's been unsustainable since. Now I mean it's been heading higher ever since both metals were totally demonetized. Silver in the US totally demonetized in 1965. Gold demonetized somewhat by the getting off of the gold standard, the US dollar standard of Bretton Woods in 1971, but since central banks still equate gold with assets and reserves, not totally off, but ever since 1971, you've not come close to a 16-to-1 or never a 9-to-1 ratio. The ratio was 16-to-1 for a brief shining moment in 1980. And for the most part, in 2011, it was at 30-to-1 for the most part. Since gold has been demonetized and gold has been allowed to free float since 1974 and Americans could own it, the gold-silver ratios average well over 50-to-1. And in the last 10 years, we've seen it rise from 50-to-1, 60-to-1, 70-to-1, 80-to-1. All the while, the silver pumpers telling you it's unsustainable. Silver's set to skyrocket. Not sure about that, at least not for the monetary purposes. If you think that that silver is going to skyrocket because of monetary reasons, that would be your collapse scenarios. Well, then gold's going to go first, not silver. And if the real reason silver can go higher is if there's an industrial commodity crunch and there's somewhat of a shortage and you need silver for other reasons. All right, let's move on from gold. There was one more story in gold I did want to cover today. This just shows how the mainstream media treats gold and silver. They trash both of them. Lately, they've been a little kinder to gold. They actually ignore silver. They don't spend as much time trashing silver, but they do spend a lot of time trashing gold. But I found this interesting. Bullish gold investors now have reason to worry. Market sentiment about gold has become irrationally exuberant, writes this guy Mark Hubert. Now, stocks have been up over 10% since the beginning of the year. And since December 24th, they're up like 18%. Gold is only up 2.7% since the beginning of the year. And they're calling that irrational exuberance. So you see, when in a given day, we saw those big days a couple of days ago, the stock prices rose 2 or 3%. And we were like, whoa, that's great. Gold went up 1%, 2%. But the stock market is actually outpacing gold. And no one seems to be concerned that the stock market has been in this massive bull market for 8 years. Gold goes up for 6 weeks, and they call it irrational exuberance. It's strange. All right, let's go over to the cryptocurrencies and see what we got over in that area. We got to take a look at our Bitcoin price and let's see what we have there. All right, Bitcoin, $3,364. That is up minus 1.5%. Ethereum getting closer to 100. That is at down almost 2%. Bcash at 112, down 1.24%. And Litecoin, the bigger loser today, down 3.5% to $32.46. Coinbase extends PayPal withdrawal option to 32 European countries. So they're integrating the systems. The point I make all the time, there's two things going on. You have the original Bitcoin, peer-to-peer, Lightning networks, atomic swaps, all off to the side. And then you have this other, I would say it's an initiative, but you have Wall Street and the big money also trying to corral it, bring it into the payment system. And they both can coexist, both of those systems. People can continue to use Bitcoin, Litecoin, whatever, the way they were intended to be used as a peer-to-peer exchange. That gives them some value, but then also having them in the financial system, in these trading exchanges, ETFs, backed system, trading on Fidelity, Coinbase, wherever they're trading, RSX, that also gives them mainstream value. And so it's quite you're actually putting a round hole in a square peg by doing that, but you actually can do it. And I think that's where there is added value to Bitcoin, is that Wall Street can, in a sense, co-opt it, and people can buy it fully transparent, get whatever form you get for your taxes on it, and trade it that way, store it with a 40 Act approved depository to hold on to your Bitcoin, and never even use it as a peer-to-peer exchange. Now, some people would say, well, that's detracting from its value. Sure, but it also gives it value because it can be traded in a fully regulated environment, but it also can be traded outside of the regulated. Well, it's not that it's traded outside the regulated environment. You're still subject to the rules of money laundering, tax evasion, and so on. But you don't necessarily have to trade your Bitcoin through a Wall Street vehicle. All right, what else do we got in cryptocurrency? Just one other story. Interesting story here that research shows Bitcoin is becoming more decentralized. I think the largest miner has no more than 20% of the hash rate, so that's a pretty decent decentralization of the Bitcoin ecosystem. Now, Trump's State of the Union was very interesting. I'm not going to give you the poll numbers first. I'm just going to go through what I saw and found interesting. These are my impressions before I listened to everybody else's impressions. When I was watching, I thought, okay, he's giving his speech, and he's going to go through what the State of the Union is. And obviously, you're going to talk about the economy, how the U.S. is viewed overseas, and he's going to go through, and I could have predicted everything he was going to talk about, South Korea, and dealing where the problem spots are in the world, Venezuela. And as I'm watching, I'm thinking, okay, so he's giving a competent speech. And the reason as I'm watching, I'm thinking this is going to be a big hit because he's portrayed as being incompetent, as being a very bad, orange man bad, very bad. All the press is negative. So if he doesn't come out and start hurling racial epithets and just offending everybody, then the speech is going to appear to be shockingly good. And I think that's what happened. There was a CBS poll that showed 76% approved of the speech. Now remember, his approval rating is under the highest approval rating he has right now in any poll is the Rasmussen poll, which is 48%. There's other polls showing him down to 43%. That means that he came off well to people, many people, who disapprove of him. And highlights of the speech where he threw out a lot of nonpartisan things, which is hard to get a non-reaction out of. When you call out heroes, you bring in Buzz Aldrin, you bring in D-Day invaders or liberators, Holocaust survivors. Those are people that are going to get a good reaction and a nonpartisan reaction. Also, what he did was he highlighted a lot of the things that were not even just nonpartisan, but things that would be liked by his political opponents, like the child tax credit, prison reform. But the most clever thing he did was when he was going through how great the country was, he was hitting on that inclusion and diversity theme by pointing out that we now have this year more women in Congress than ever before. And there were women dressed in the suffragette white, and for the most part, they wanted to sit there and sit on their hands with a scowling look on their face that they're being subjected to Orange Man, and they just broke out into a big old whoop because they had been identified, and they're like, yeah, we're out here, we're the women, and yep, we're the new breed, and a lot of them are first-time members of Congress, and they're very happy. And I almost thought to myself, oops, they shouldn't be cheering like that, because the visual on that is that they're enjoying themselves and having a great time at a Trump. And again, this is why I think 76% of the people who watched it in the CBS poll approved. Now, that's an optic, and that's because, okay, he's not saying much. When I say not saying much, he's pointing out heroes. He's talking about nonpartisan things, some economic statistics. But he actually got partisan on a couple of things. One, he made a very impassioned plea never to go socialist. He said, we were born free, and this country will never become a socialist country. And the camera zoomed in on Bernie Sanders, and he looked pretty much crushed. He was sitting there thinking, the 1%, this isn't right. But anyway, I think that was a very partisan moment. But again, the country isn't socialist, so it's still, you're in the majority there. And I think Chuck Schumer and I think Gillibrand and Nancy Pelosi still clapped for that, so they weren't ready to go full socialist. I think Ocasio-Cortez had to stare on during that point. So he was partisan on that. And the other partisan thing he mentioned was that he didn't want all these investigations going on. Thought that was harassing the president. But he did make his pitch for the wall, and he tucked it in with, as part of an entire plan for border security, which, again, the polls showed that 72% approved of his ideas on border security, which means, sure, you can cherry pick out the bits and pieces, but the wall was a portion or centerpiece of that. So it's a very important message, I think, for Congress now to say, look, he may not be the most popular, but his immigration ideas, 72% approve. And I actually think just the idea that the wall doesn't work, so to speak, or whatever criticism you have against the wall, you may think it's ineffective or it's a waste of money, but those are very, very weak arguments, because even if it's somewhat effective, it's still worth doing, because there's other portions of the country, the border, that have a wall. If you really think it's a total waste, you'd be advocating to rip them down. And we know that most of the people in that room had voted at one point or the other for some type of barrier. So the barrier is not meant to be the solution. The other red herrings people point out is, well, 90% of the drugs come through ports of entry, or people overstaying their welcome or their visas. That's the issue. Yeah, those issues got to be dealt with too. But it's common sense that if someone wants to get into the country and doesn't want to have to go through a port of entry because they're doing human trafficking or smuggling, they're not going to go through a port of entry. They'll figure out a way to go through an area where it's difficult. Now you say, well, they'll build tunnels. Well, sure, but you are going to stop some. You're going to stop the people less determined. It's the same reason why you don't leave your door open at night or you lock it. Sure, someone could kick your door down. That doesn't mean you don't lock it and you don't have a nice thick door. It doesn't. It's foolishness that they're actually fighting over, and the amount of money, the $5 billion. I mean, that's nothing. I heard Rand Paul talking about they spend $50 billion a year in Afghanistan. That's yearly. This is a one-off $5 billion. So I think what's going to happen is there is going to be this emergency declaration. Before we get to the quick analysis on that, I want to show you the poll. So here is the CBS poll, and that's pretty shocking, 76% to 24%. Now, one thing that's possible, it is possible, that so many people that are against Trump did not watch the speech. Let's be careful here to say this was some type of rousing, stunning approval, because if half of the people that hate Trump didn't watch it, and that would make 75% of the people watching it being Republicans or people that like Trump, then of course this makes sense. So if you have a group of 100 people, let's say half are for Trump and half are against Trump, but half the people that are against Trump don't watch it, well, that's 75% right there. Not saying that's what it is, but you can never read into these. You need to know a little bit more before. 76% of the people approve Trump's speech. That is all I need to know. No, actually not. But still, it's a pretty big number. Now, let's look at the Smaulgld game changers, how they voted. Well, that's pretty much the same. But I would imagine, just given the tenor of what we discuss here, there's probably a 50... I would say there's probably a 55-45 in favor of Trump versus a 55-45 against Trump. That's just my sense. I mean, that could be wrong. But again, 71% approve, 29% disapprove. Now, about this emergency. The other night, I was talking about Justice Napolitano. And he said that, oh, if Trump declares an emergency, it'll get struck down. And he cited a Supreme Court case in which Truman tried to nationalize the steel mines on national security, and the Supreme Court said, no way, you can't do that. You got to go through Congress. You can't appropriate the national steel mines. And he said, and that's why Trump will lose. Now, I'm sorry that Judge Napolitano's on TV talking about this stuff, because I don't expect him to give a law review article type analysis, but he pretty much made it sound like, well, it's dispositive. There's already a court case, and therefore that court case is going to be dispositive and Trump's going to get shut down. Not necessarily true at all, for a couple of reasons. First of all, there's a statute already in place that wasn't in place back then, a 1976 statute that gives the president specific emergency powers. Okay, but let's say even if there's not a statute, still a different case. Trump is not trying to expropriate private property from individuals or companies like steel mills. He's actually just putting up a wall, and assuming he's already got the eminent domain issue squared away, he's not imposing on another entity where he needs Congress approval to go ahead and do that. But second of all, currently, there is a statute that gives him this right. So unless the court is going to say that the statute is unconstitutional, which I don't think they're going to do, he's going to win. He may get shut down first with a temporary restraining order. The other thing about, since the case in, I think it was 1955, when Truman tried to nationalize the steel mills, the steel mills, it was a different court. Yes, there's a thing called stare decisis, let it stand in Latin, that each case, if it stands for a certain proposition, you have to follow that precedent. But this is not even a case that's the same. We're not talking about the expropriation of private property from a corporation. We're talking about building a wall. And we're also talking he's building the wall pursuant to a specific statute that Congress gave him, not him, but gave the president the power to to use in 1976. All right, let's move on now. So I'm not sure that was, I guess it's time for, you guessed it, it's time for Moronica. Uh-oh, we got a moron here.
Presenting the distinguished international news commentator and foreign correspondent,
Smaulgld. This has been an extraordinary week in world affairs.
No, I told Hillary Clinton that that's moronic.
This is really not Moronica. This is almost a comedy of errors, and it's something that, it's just amazing how it's played out. You really couldn't write a script like this. It's what's happening in Virginia. And not sure what the implications of this are going to be, if any, beyond Virginia. Depends on whether the media makes Virginia a microcosm of the United States, which they often do. These little incidences that happen around the country, well, I don't say little incidents, but an incident that happens in some area of the country, they make it seem like that's what's happening everywhere in the U.S. The U.S. has a problem because this happened in this town or this happened in that town. And they make it sound like it's endemic. This is who we are. This is what the country's come to, because some 6 individuals were involved with 4 individuals or 20 individuals in some type of encounter, and that's supposedly indicative of what's going on. But anyway, this started a couple of weeks ago when this guy Ralph Northman is the governor of Virginia, and he explained how this new third trimester abortion bill would work. And the way he described it was that the infant could be actually born, and then put off to the side and, quote, these are his words, made comfortable. So the baby is born. This isn't abortion. This is, he's saying the baby has been put off to the side, and then a decision would be made by the mother and up to 2 doctors to decide what they were going to do. Okay, and everybody listened to that, and they said, oh, so you've described this very cavalierly. You're just going to go ahead, and Trump called this last night, execute the baby. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, a few days later comes out that he has in his yearbook a picture of 2 people. He originally said he was one of them, then he denied he was either of them. Someone in blackface and in a KKK outfit. Now you're just wondering how that would get in, even if you wanted that to be in, why the yearbook committee in the school would allow that picture to be in there. It just doesn't make any sense to even be in a yearbook. So, any event, there's now this uproar over him about he's got to resign. So he has a press conference, and then he denies he was in either picture, and he says how bad it was, that picture. And then he admits he had dressed in blackface, but he had dressed in blackface as part of a, I don't know, some type of moonwalking competition where he was going to be Michael Jackson. Well, that doesn't make him any better. And then what happens is some reporter yells out, "Can you still do the moonwalk?" And he looks around like, "Hey, yeah, sure, I'll show these guys I can moonwalk." And his wife has to nudge him, and he says, "My wife tells me it wouldn't be appropriate." So he is basically lost all of his political capital. I don't think that even the Democrats, I think the Democrats of Virginia have called for him to resign. I think the 2 Democratic senators don't know if they've called for him to resign. I think it's Tim Kaine and the other guy. But the point is, he's under heavy attack and under a lot of pressure to resign. And then you think, okay, well, the way democracy works is just like in the presidency. If the president resigns, you got a vice president. The vice president resigns, you got a succession. It goes to the Speaker of the House. Well, in Virginia, it goes to a lieutenant governor. Well, the lieutenant governor, who supposedly has very similar views, if not even what they would call more extreme views on abortion than Ralph, he gets all of a sudden hit with a sexual assault charge. The accuser hires Christine Ballsy Ford's attorneys. She issued a statement today. So now he's under heavy fire, and it'd be very hard probably for him to accede to the governorship if this guy, Ralph Norman, who's decided he ain't quitting, were to decide he's going to quit. So here is Justin Fairfax, and it says here, goes to firm that represented Christine Blasey Ford. Of course, he's denied it. She's issued a long statement detailing what happened, and then the question becomes, does this thing become now an FBI investigation on all the attendant publicity, negative publicity? So who knows what's going to happen? So now you're thinking, okay, well, the governor resigns. This guy's not going to take us. Oh, it's all right. We go to the attorney general. Uh-oh. Attorney general. I don't know what it's about Virginia. Yeah, I wore blackface at a college party. Now, why? Who knows? But this is not very good because you now have 3 guys. Oh, part of the patriarchy, right? They're 2 of them have blackface issues, and the other guy is an African American. He has sexual assault issues. So this is a comedy of errors. I mean, this is really, really bad that you have 3 of them all with these issues. It's not like, you know, when Richard Nixon resigned, they thought, well, we'll bring Jerry Ford in. He's a good guy. Never said anything of importance. No one knows much about him, and he can basically sit there, and at least we'll feel like we don't have Tricky Dick in there anymore. But here, you can't say we get rid of Northman. It's like, no, then we get Fairfax. No, then we get this guy here, Mark Herring. So, not necessarily moronic, but a very interesting political situation because never seen that one before. All right, let's move on now to the topic of the evening, copper. As I mentioned at the start, a lot of people insist, mostly precious metals people, they get very excited about calling things money because somehow that gives it some kind of gravity, that if it's money, period, then somehow there's some added value. And that's true. That is true. If something is desired and is used as money, well, then there's an added demand for it. There's an added premium. And to a certain extent, that's why I think the gold has a bit of an added premium on silver, because it does have more of a monetary value than silver does. And it's also a better looking metal to most people. Most people do prefer gold. I mean, if you get engaged, you give a gold ring, not a silver ring. I don't know if that's aesthetics or both, aesthetics and tradition, that people know that gold is more expensive, so they want to have the gold, or they actually like the gold better, a combination of the two. I don't know. But we do a poll on that. Just if price were no different, would you prefer gold or silver? Maybe we'll do that tomorrow. Okay, now copper. Copper, I have a chart here. I want to go through the characteristics of money. Now those are copper bars, I guess, right? They look just like any silver or copper bars, right? I mean, copper also is very useful. Without copper, we could not drink our water because copper is one of the most useful elements. Copper is very, very useful. Copper was useful before it was money. History of copper, I mean, there are ancient uses of copper as money, but there are ancient uses as copper for ornaments, copper tools coming from the Stone Age. Then you mix copper with tin and you get bronze. You got the Bronze Age. I mean, copper is a historic, well-prized industrial metal back then and now. And it's good for electronics. It's good for use in cars. It really has it in the wiring. It's everywhere. Pipes. Copper is extremely useful. Bullets. I mean, it's just a it's a fantastic metal. And it's a valuable metal. So let's look at the qualities of, well, before we do that, yeah, let's look at the qualities. Then I'm going to look at some of the prices. Let's look at the characteristics of money. And then tomorrow we'll do nickel, and then we'll do platinum and palladium in a separate show. All right, I like to think, in no particular order, that in order to be money, something has to be fungible, durable, portable, divisible, accepted. It has to be a unit of account, a medium of exchange, and a store of value. Now, if you go to the Smaulgld site, I have the Smaulgld money matrix, and I actually go through these in detail as well, and I add in there, and I assign value to them, Bitcoin and Litecoin. But let's just start with what we know people think are traditionally money. Gold. Is it fungible? Yes. Ounce of gold is an ounce of gold. Is it durable? Yep. You can leave gold around. It's not going anywhere. You can drop it to the bottom of the ocean, come back up 2,000 years looking the same. Is it portable? Yep. You can lug gold around. Is it divisible? Yes, you can make it into smaller bits. It's probably the most divisible of all metals. You can hammer gold into the thinnest of wires and the smallest of pieces. Is it accepted? Yeah. People will take gold. They're not really against gold. No one's against gold. If someone is, you can find somebody else who's in favor. Is it a unit account? Well, when you bang it into a coin, it is. Is it a medium of exchange? Had been for 5,000 years. It's not now, but, well, in some respects, maybe it is. There's gold notes. I'm sure there's trading amongst nations you don't know about. They use gold. Gold can be used as a medium of exchange. It may not be the most used medium of exchange anymore. It clearly isn't, but it is a medium of exchange and clearly is a store of value. Now, silver, is it fungible? Yes. Durable? Almost as much as gold. Does tarnish a bit. Portable? Yep. Although, because it's cheaper, it's harder to lug around value, but you can still port it around. Clearly divisible into coins. Accepted? Yeah, you can get rid of silver. You can get people to accept silver. Unit of account? Yes, if it's hammered into coins. Medium of exchange? Could be, has been, but probably isn't now, but still definitely a medium of exchange. And a store of value? Not really, but it is. I mean, we've seen, if you remember, we did the silver and gold versus major world currencies, and we've seen in many instances silver against many world currencies is 50-50 proposition. Some years it goes up against really crappy currencies, and other years it goes down against those currencies. Whereas gold almost always goes up against really bad currencies and goes up 60-70% of the time, even against the dollar. But silver is definitely a 50-50 proposition or worse against some fiat currencies, and that's not really a store of value. And that's been going on now for the last 20 or 30 years. Silver, remember, got a lot of its store of value during the bimetallic days, where, remember what they were trying to do? The free silver people, if you haven't listened to the couple of videos we did on the silver cross and the gold cross, what they wanted was basically the government to mint coins and stamp a higher value than their market value. So they're always trying to get silver boosted into the system because they knew when the silver came in, it would come in at a higher price, and that would be inflationary because there's a lot more silver and it was less valued. But As a store of value, yes, because more so than paper currency. But in a given year, it may not be. All right. Now let's look at copper. Is copper fungible? Absolutely. I think almost any metal is fungible. Is it durable? Yes. I mean, it's not, it does rust. It does get a little rust. But for the most part, there are Roman coins around to this day that were made out of copper. For example, found one on the stock photos here. This guy here. Now that is a bronze coin, but it's made primarily of copper. And that is a sestertius. And that is a unit of account. And that is a coin that is, you can see it's in decent shape right now. And people use them as a medium of exchange. So clearly, copper can be used as a medium of exchange. As you can see, this sestertius here was considered a standard unit of account. The other interesting thing I saw was it was related to other units of account like silver and gold based on the, like this would be worth like a quarter of a denarius, I think. And the name for brass was called auriclium, which is also close to auricularum, which is close to the word for gold coin, aureus. So it's like gold, copper and gold and silver. You can see they're viewing them all as some type of unit of account, some type of, by weight, as a medium of exchange, and they're hammered into coins. So clearly, yes, copper is durable, as we can see, because they've been around. Copper coins, we see other copper statutes and so on. But as a characteristic, it has durability, and it is divisible. As you can see, that's a relatively small size coin. Is it accepted? As copper, not so much. I mean, if you were to go around to people and say, hey, what do you think? Now you can find scrap dealers. They will buy copper from you. You just have to know where they are. So yeah, it's not like you can't find anyone to take your copper. So I would say it is accepted. Now you can find more places that'll accept it. Maybe a local coin dealer, local coin shop might take these if you had them. I don't know if people buy these things. The problem with buying copper is the manufacturing charge is high, so you pay so much of a premium on the fabrication charge that it's not cost effective to buy copper in this type of form. But it is accepted. And is it a unit of account? Absolutely. It was a unit of account when it was a sestertius in Roman days. It was a unit of account in the United States when they had these large cents circulating. In fact, copper was the first unit of account that we had in the United States. I think in 1793 was when the first half cent and large cents were minted. The first silver dimes weren't minted until 1796. First quarter, 1796. First half dollar, 1794. And the first silver dollar, 1794. So they have been a unit of account, copper coins, for a long period of time. And indeed, they are still a unit of account. In the United States, we have quarters, nickels, dimes, half dollars. They're all made of copper. They're 75% copper, 25% nickel with a copper core. The euro, the large euro coin, is a copper nickel coin. The 2 euro coin is a copper nickel coin. Even their small mini chain stuff is copper covered steel. Then they have Nordic gold for the mid-sized coins. That's really a copper alloy. The United Kingdom has copper coins. So copper today trades as an accepted unit of account. Even though the pennies today are zinc, the other coins, the nickel, dime, quarter, and if there's still some half dollars or dollars circulating, they are those presidential dollars. Those are made of copper. So copper is clearly a unit of account and a medium of exchange. Now here's where it gets interesting. So it's a bit of I would say it's a bit of a stretch. I think the biggest hit against copper as being accepted is that, or portable, is that it's relatively less expensive than silver. However, copper is closer in price to silver than silver is to gold. So whatever hit you're going to take on copper, because it's not accepted or it's not portable, you somewhat can take on silver. Because in order to buy something of value, copper is not really going to be what you want to use if you want to port it somewhere. I mean, imagine trying to pay for a car in pennies, or pre-1982 pennies or quarters or dimes or nickels. Still, imagine trying to pay for a car with silver. You're going to have to lug a few monster boxes to get that done as well. Gold, a lot easier. You could probably handle it in your pocket. But they're still all portable. It's not like lead. So I would say copper is fungible, durable, portable, divisible, accepted, unit of account, and a medium of exchange. Now we get to store of value. Now this is where it gets interesting. Because you would think that gold and silver, if they're money, they would maintain their store of value more than something like copper. Right? Gold and silver are money. Therefore, they have that added value. Well, let's just look at the last 20 years. Because my argument is they're not money. Or gold is a bit more money, but silver really isn't. So let's look at the gold, silver, and copper prices. 1999, gold, $279 an ounce. By 2009, $972 an ounce. 2019, $1,307 an ounce. Over a 20-year period, I should have put a 20, I'll do it for tomorrow. Over a 20-year period, the value of gold rose 368%. That's more than a store of value. That's a nice increase versus fiat. Over a 10-year period, gold rose 34% from $972 to the price today at $1,307. So clearly gold is a store of value. You can't argue with it. Silver, $19.99, $5.21 an ounce, $14.67 an ounce in 2009, and $15.65 in 2019. That is a 199% gain over 20 years, but just a 6% gain in 10 years. Now, a 6% gain in 10 years does not keep up with inflation. Sorry, that is not a store of value. In fact, the gold price for 10 years, that's keeping up with inflation, even at 34%. But here's where it gets interesting. Look at copper. This is by the ton now. This goes against its portability and perhaps its acceptance. Copper, $1,573 a ton in 1999, goes up to $5,165 a ton in 2009, and up to $5,720 a ton. Well, over a 20-year period, that's up 263%. That's a greater increase than silver, which is supposedly money, period. And even over a 10-year period, copper has outperformed silver. So, if silver is supposedly money, and money is supposedly what gives its value, and a lot of people would say copper isn't money, then why is copper worth more money than silver? Because being money doesn't necessarily give it value, but one could also argue there is a monetary demand for copper that eats up a lot of the world's coinage. I mean, a lot of the world's coinage eats up a lot of the copper in the world. I haven't done the calculation. I was planning on doing that when I do nickel, but there are still an inordinate amounts of coins minted in the United States, dimes, quarters, half dollars, and these clad coins, which are 75% copper, 25% nickel. And we're going to take a look at that tomorrow. But you can see here that copper's held up better than silver. Now, this is not an investment thesis that you should buy copper instead of silver. It's just highlighting over a 20-year period, you wouldn't expect something that isn't considered or prized in the same way that people think of silver, that copper would be better. Now, there are people who might think that silver, copper, and nickel are cheap metals. I know it's blasphemy to some, but that gold really is, and by the numbers you would say it's true, that gold really is the prized metal. We're going to take a look tomorrow at platinum and palladium and see how they fare. But remember, palladium has never been used as a unit of account or a medium of exchange. Platinum only temporarily in 19th century Russia was ever used as a unit of account and a medium of exchange. So they're not really, they're going to fail right off the bat. But you can see that copper does have, if we go back to our chart here, it has monetary components or monetary characteristics. And it actually is used, and you can point to factually, it's a medium of exchange. It is changed today in many parts of the world. Many coins in developed nations have some level of copper in them. And I don't know if that's going to continue, but currently, I believe they're a unit of account. They are accepted. Even the base copper, you can find a refiner to dump your copper. And it's a store of value. Clearly, if silver's a store of value over the last 20 years, last 10 years, copper's done better. Okay, let's see what you guys think about all this. In the meantime, let's get the mug pitch in, because we haven't seen a mug today. We haven't seen a dog. We haven't seen much. But remember, you can always donate to Smaulgld via Patreon, PayPal, Bitcoin, Litecoin. You can buy Smaulgld game-changing mugs, super classic and classic mugs. You can send your donation to Smaulgld by check. You can send precious metals, or I've actually received a couple of cash donations in the mail. So that's always a nice thing to go to the post box and open it up and see a nice note in there with some piece of green, worthless U.S. currency. Very useful currency indeed. All right, let's see what you guys think over in the comments. People don't get as excited about copper. And I think a lot of it has to do with the last 10 years, the very popular YouTube channels have glorified silver. I mean, you have Silver Doctors, you have Silver Bullet, Silver Shield, you have goldsilver.com. They have really pitched silver, and people now believe silver. The silver story is so strong. There aren't channels dedicated to copper. There's certainly none dedicated to nickel. And generally around the world, gold is the prized metal. Silver, as I mentioned, Americans buy more investment silver than the Chinese do. Indian silver demand is very much bigger, but it's not for investment demand. It's for jewelry. It's for silverware. It's for industry. But I think that has a lot to do with people's perceptions of silver. It's very an emotional response. How can you say silver isn't money? Silver's money. Silver's money. Silver's money. Period. Period. All right. Copper's money. Period. Let's see what we got. Mate, answer no, not an accepted medium of exchange. Well, that's not true. Copper is a very accepted medium of exchange. If you go into a store and you've got 4 quarters and the thing is $1, they will take them as a medium of exchange. Still a bit of copper in the penny. Yeah, that's true. Right now, the U.S. penny, well, it's zinc. I think it's copper. What is it? Copper plate or something like that? I don't remember exactly what it was. It's an alloy. I think it's yeah, I think it's like 99.2% copper, a zinc, and then a plating of, no, it actually has a little copper in it. I think it's like 0.8% copper, or no, 0.8% copper, and then the copper plate. Yes, but it's still copper. Andrew, I have some copper rounds. They're fun. Yeah, they're fun, but you'll never get your money back on them, because I think just like the Silver Eagle has a, when you pay $2 a coin as an authorized purchaser on a silver American Eagle, and the price of silver is $10, you're paying a 20% premium on your ounce of silver. When it's $20, you're paying a 10% premium, so you have to make that up. And remember, you don't get the authorized purchaser premium. You have to pay $2.5 or $3 per Silver Eagle. But for copper rounds, I've looked at them. It's almost like a 50 to 100% premium Like you have to pay to get them forged into coins and rounds and bars. If I go to Home Depot, then yes, it's money, a store of money. Okay. Let's see. Ann Golden Holloman. Copper is my cat name. She's golden. Why don't you put a picture of Copper next to your Smaulgld mug and send it in and we'll take a look. Be nice to see it. We haven't seen a cat yet. Someone told me, I think it was DB, he said, my cat is ugly. And I said, oh, that's not nice. So he didn't want to send a picture. But that is a cool name, Copper. It's my cat's name. Shark Air, I'm selling copper right now at $40 a pound because people use it in their house because it looks elegant. The older it gets, the better it looks. I call that money. Yeah, well, I don't think it's money because of that reason, but I think for the reason we went through it is. And I know that in San Francisco, they have a building and it just, they like, you know, when it oxidizes, it looks nicer as it turns a little bit of green in the copper. All right. Copper pipes, yes, copper pipes are very important. Copper roof, gutters, yeah, and the copper is also, again, a desired metal. It's a nice looking metal. So it does have that value for look as well. Copper jewelry, not so much, but there is some. Keisha throws in, the stock market's a big, fat, ugly bubble. Yep. Andrew says, Ann, I'm waiting for my cryptos and metals to moon so I can copper my house. Who's waiting for their copper to moon so they can silver and gold their house? Now, Scott says, since I prefer plumbing with copper on natural gas lines, PVC for water, it has currency, I would argue, is stronger than silver's claim as money. The biggest cut against the idea that silver is so useful can easily apply to copper. Copper is so useful. Silver is used in electronics. Well, copper is used in electronics. I mean, silver is used in electric vehicles. Copper is used in vehicles. Copper is very, very useful. The idea that something is useful that gives it value, well, it gives it some value. It depends on how useful and how much of it is needed and how much of it there is. But the problem with copper as money is the portability issue, the unit of account. It's good as pocket change. But you know what? That's what silver used to be. Silver was pocket change when it was circulating. That's why it was the people's money. They wanted it to be worth more than it actually was. They wanted free silver. They wanted the government to stamp $1 on 72 cents worth of silver. All right, what else do we got? In Chile, they stole cable lines with thick copper gauges on the pole, says Pablo Pina. Yes, just like they're stealing palladium under cars. Yep, copper is valuable. In fact, right now, let's take a look. I mean, copper has a massive industrial use, so it's actually used in far greater quantities than silver, but then, of course, it's available in far greater quantities than silver. But, let's see. So it's right now, it's about $3.29 a pound, and it's up from $2.68 a pound. No, it's at $2.80 a pound. It's up from about $2.68 a pound a month ago. It's about the same from 60 days ago. It's pretty much steady. Last year, it got over $3.30 a pound, and that's about its high during the last 5 years. It's holding up as well as, if not better, than silver. What else? Keisha, the wall will not be built, and yes, the approval rating is definitely caused by the State of the Union boycott. That's probably it. It has to be, because I can't see people that are die-hard anti-Trumpers saying, oh yeah, that speech, that did it for me. Pablo says, my mug approves. Scott Wardell, law review articles are hard to write. I tried and failed, accepted his approval. Lewis was law review editor-in-chief. Haven't looked. No, I was on law review. I was a associate editor of the law review. And if you're interested, Scott, I will send you my law review article that I had published. I'm sure you won't read it. Okay. Keisha Rhinestone. The only way Trumpty Dumpty will get the wall built is by declaring national emergency. Yes. You can trigger impeachment proceedings, but remember, that's not a crime. For impeachment proceedings to actually have any bite, you have to cite a crime or a misdemeanor. Exercising your constitutional rights, or at least what one believes are constitutional rights, could not be considered a crime or misdemeanor. So that would really go nowhere. What it will immediately trigger, Keisha, is a circuit court or district court coming up with a rationale why someone with standing has the right to shut it down. They'll get an injunction to shut it down. It'll go through the court system. It'll go to the Supreme Court, and they will rule on it there. But there's no reason to impeach. There's no rationale to impeach the president for doing what he thinks is in the best interest of the country, which is to secure the border. That doesn't make any sense. We're going to impeach him because he's acting like the president. We just disagree with his tactics. That's not an impeachable event. Yes, we're trying to do things to protect citizen dreamers. Well, you see, the danger of the not doing a deal is, remember, if Trump declares an emergency and just starts building the wall, then there's no deal. Then he's doing something sua sponte, as they say, Scott in Latin. He probably will and won't get impeached, says Ann. He has a lot of support. But again, you can't impeach the president. There's no basis to impeach the president on, I don't like his policy. I don't think he should build a wall. He shouldn't be allowed to do that. That's not an impeachable event. But even if it was, you're right. He's not going to get thrown out of office because 67 senators aren't going to say, yeah, we got to get rid of him because of that. You can get rid of him for something else. If it's found that he's done something, he committed a crime or a misdemeanor. But performing his duties in a way that you don't like is not an impeachable event. He has to do something that is a crime or a misdemeanor. And then the question is whether that crime or misdemeanor has to have been commissioned during his presidency. And I believe the answer is yes. So even if it was found, I believe, that let's say he was colluding with Russia left and right and then became president, I'm not sure. Well, I think he can be impeached, but he can't be convicted until he leaves office. That's what it is. No, you can impeach someone, but it's generally for things you're doing while you're president. All right, let's see. DW, third time is the charm. Yeah, all right, let's see. What else do we got here? Zipper Fixer says, got his mug today. All right. It's good to see the mugs arriving fast and in time. I didn't realize how many comments. I thought we were winding down, but there were so many comments here that were just stuffed. Oh, my goodness. All right, let me try to get through them. Wow. There's far more comments here. All right. I think I've caught up to where we are now. We'll get through them. I don't want to leave anyone's comments out. There's always some really good comments here. Scott Wardell, love the Excel chart. It's that simple. Well, I guess. If that's how you view what money is, then those are you got to check them off, right? Joseph DeMarco is here. Hello. Andrew says, copper is a useful metal, but I'm not going to use it to store my value. Now, my question is, if the data shows you that copper stores value better than silver, why wouldn't you store your value in copper as opposed to silver? Now, one reason would be space. I mean, how much copper can you have? Well, then maybe you buy a copper ETF and have them stored for you. Seth Shepard, Litecoin is the best. Litecoin is, what is Litecoin? It's a silver to Bitcoin's gold. DW Excel chart may show X's in every box with its missing weight to carry around with you. Well, that's true. We did mention. I don't know when this comment came up, but you are absolutely right. Carl Joseph DeMarco has learned copper is more useful than silver and gold. That is all you need to know. I don't think copper will ever replace silver in solar panels. No, and I don't think silver will ever replace copper pipes. I mean, it's almost it's a non sequitur. Doesn't mean anything. That silver is useful in one way, and because copper is not silver, then copper doesn't have value. No. Copper has its own value that silver doesn't have. Wish we had copper mugs. Yeah, I do too. That might be the better thing to do than silver mugs. Actually, Carl's right. Copper solar panels and new technology are getting more and more ore efficient. Yep, copper drinking containers in the past, absolutely. That is all you need to know. All right, Scott. Keisha, 20 to 30 years, very short time span determining store of value. I know, but I can go back further. I can go 40 years. I can go 50 years. It's not a pretty picture for silver. Gold destroys silver over the last 100 years. 200. How far back do you want to go? Once you start saying, well, in Roman times, this and that. Well, we're not in Roman times. We're not riding chariots. We're not wearing togas. So I think maybe 20 years is too short, but I'll show you. If you go back 40, 50, 100 years, silver has well underperformed gold, and copper's kept up with silver. Now, a lot of people don't want to believe that because they really have learned, they have been indoctrinated with silver, that silver has been given a status because it's talked about so much. It's revered so much on these channels. It's really only in the United States, and it's really only on YouTube, that there is this big silver adoration society. People get mad about when you mention that silver doesn't even come close to the value of gold. Though I do not have the percentages, since I think it's in most coinage in the US now, it is by definition money, or at least proportionally. Do I get partial credit? Sure. Whatever that's worth, you get partial Smaulgld credit. All right. Yeah, Canada was copper covered zinc now. Yeah, we discussed this already. Yes, Claudius the Market says copper bullion is really overpriced. It's like $2 a pound, but they charge you $2 for a 1 ounce round. Yeah, the fabrication charges so much. And Hit 'em High says don't forget the pre-1982 penny. And remember, that means that from 1794 to 1981, the U.S. minted copper pennies. They were money. Yeah, the way to buy copper has to be in bulk. I mean, you're not going to buy it in these rounds or anything. I mean, you can buy them if you like them, just to have, but you're never going to make your money back selling it for scrap. I would have to go up 20 times. I think if gold and silver, says Pablo, become money, it'll be incorporated in the fiat bill, so no need to carry kilograms of silver. Okay. Keisha, spot silver is highly manipulated through naked short contracts. Yes, that's true. So is gold. And I bet so is copper, so is palladium, so is every commodity, every stock on the planet. It really is. The idea of manipulation of these things it's a fact of life. It's not even a conspiracy theory. The problem with that, though, is that becomes the price. And I think people, they keep saying, it's almost like if you know something's going to happen, and it's not going to be good, but you insist, but it shouldn't happen, so I'm going to bet on it not happening when you know it's going to happen. It's almost like banging your head against the wall. I mean, I see a lot of these people they've done the research, they understand, they can tell you when silver's going to go down, they know silver's going to go down, they know it's never going to get past its 50-day, 100-day moving average, they give you all the examples of when it happens, and yet they're gold and silver bulls. Why would you be if you know it's going to get knocked down? Well, it's always on the one day they won't be able to, or be unsustainable, and okay. I've been doing it for 45 years. All right. Nickel, yes, we're going to do nickel tomorrow, Andrew. All right. Copper is great for diluting silver and gold, says Jack AJ. Well, you know, Jack, a lot of copper, a lot of gold gets a very nice look to it. I know the European, Swedish use a lot of 22 and 18 karat gold that is predominantly, the extra metal is copper. Gives a very nice red tinge to it. It's not so much like a golden copper. It's very nice. You guys are talking about copper. All right, Andrew. What else do we got here? Yes, Mike says pre-1982 pennies were 2 cents in copper melt. And that number goes up and down. Actually, you know that the 1 cent, the zinc pennies are now worth almost a penny. Because zinc is no longer cheap. In fact, let me show you the zinc. Interesting thing about zinc now, Zinc used to be like 65 cents a pound. It's now $1.20 a pound and has been as high as $1.64. Right now, zinc is a little less than half the price of copper. That's not normal. Zinc is really, really moving up. So even the zinc pennies are being worse stuff. Okay, mate. The copper coin used in a shop now is a fiat representation. It's not the true value being exchanged. Ah, yes, but remember, do you think the true value of a silver coin from 1796 and 1910 and 1840 and 1878 represented the value of silver? No. The whole point of the free silver movement was not that the silver was worth something. They wanted the government to stamp $1 on an ounce on 0.77 ounces of silver, which wasn't worth $1. It was worth 72 cents, 80 cents. So silver itself was not used as an accurate representation. Remember, a dime has been a dime since 1792 to 1964. A quarter, same thing, from 1796 to 1964 was a silver quarter. Same amount, pretty much same amount of silver. They did fiddle with it a couple of times. But the point being is from I don't know if it's 1892, whatever the date was, there was a long period of time where there was no changes. 1853, they did change the amount of silver. They changed the size of it. I think from 1853 to 1964, for 100 years, the amount of silver in the coins never changed. So it wasn't a representation of the value of silver. It was what the government said a dime was, 10 cents, quarter, 25 cents. So it's the same thing with the copper. So when people trash copper and say, well, it's not worth, it's a fiat representation. Yes, there's not in a quarter. A quarter is not worth 25 cents worth of metal. But in certain times in U.S. history, there wasn't $1 worth of silver in the silver dollar either. All right. I want to see copper on the screen here. Oh, Jack, if you've got your mug, I want to see the gray silver cat with the Smaulgld mug. All right. Mike Hernes, did you say hard liquor is money? Could be. It's not the ideal form of money. What I've said, and I've actually, there's an article, you can look it up, just type in, is whiskey money, Smaulgld, or is cognac money? It does meet the characteristics. It is durable, it is fungible. It's not very portable, but the more distilled it is, the more portable it is. The biggest problem with it's not really durable, because once it's used, it's finished. The value in whiskey is eventually you're going to drink it, and then you can't use it anymore. All right. What does copper come out of the ground percentage-wise compared to gold and silver? I don't have those numbers, but remember, relative rarity does not determine price. I don't know if you've heard my example before. My artwork is limited. I've only done 2 paintings. Picasso's done thousands. His is worth more. So just going on the, I know the ratio now, and that is all I need to know, and therefore I know that silver is undervalued. No. It depends on what it's used for. Same with copper. Depends on what the demand profile is. Depends on what the premiums that people are willing to pay for the metal are. So I don't know what the difference is, but I think it's, you do yourself a disservice if you think you're just going to come up with a ratio and say, there, now it's, I know it's undervalued or overvalued, because people have been doing that for the last 10 years with silver, insisting silver is rarer than gold. Silver only comes out of the ground at 9-to-1, and therefore it should be 9-to-1. And why they've been spouting that since 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, it's just the gold-silver ratio keeps climbing, and they keep saying it is unsustainable. Well, they need to re-examine the basis for their assumption that somehow relative rarity is a determinant of price. It often isn't. But they repeat that. Every silver channel will tell you it comes out of the ground at a low. Therefore, no. Remember, platinum, if you don't like my art example, platinum comes out of the ground at a ratio 10 times less than gold. And gold is more expensive. Even when platinum is, quote, fairly valued, platinum is still not much more expensive. It's never been 10 times more expensive than gold because of its, quote, relative rarity. So it's To me, it's a data point, but it's definitely not dispositive. Mike Kearney, Smaulgld. Copper is not as much money as silver is. I would agree. I think copper is, it works as money, but it's inconvenient. It's good for small change, but it clearly fits the characteristics. It clearly does. It's just that you can't buy much with it. All right. Fiona Whalen. Hello, Fiona. Traditional Russian gold has a big copper content. Yeah, the Eastern Europeans like the gold copper in there. Yeah, you're saying what I said earlier. It gives gold a reddish hue. That's why it's called rose gold. Famous Russian jeweler Carl Fabergé worked with pink gold, and he made eggs too. Yes, indeed. Okay, got Jack. All right, I think we're gonna cut it off. We got oh no, Keisha's always got some good comments. But the manipulate, this is the thing. This what Keisha's gonna say here is a very classic line that all the gold and silver channels, they keep you coming. The manipulation can't go on forever. It'll go on until it doesn't. But they like to say that before the public catches on. No, the public. Actually, you should check out my article, Why COMEX Won't Default. The public isn't going to catch on because the public doesn't trade on COMEX. Public doesn't care about COMEX. The traders don't care whether there's any gold or silver there. They're trading for fiat. There will be a wide divergence between the price of physical matter and the paper price. That happens. I don't have time to go into this right now. That is something that people have drilled into their heads for the last 10 years, even though history, recent history, indicates nothing of the sort. I won't go into that now. I will do another. But check out Keisha. Check out Why COMEX Won't Default, Smaulgld, and let me know what you think. Come back tomorrow night. But a lot of the things that people believe, I see them. That's why I do the robot voice. They have these beliefs in their head, and where they got them from was listening to all these different channels that say the same thing. Silver is rarer than gold. It comes out of the ground at 9:1, and therefore the gold-silver ratio is unsustainable. COMEX is going to default. They are trading around a small pile of silver. Once the public realizes, then the price of silver and gold will skyrocket. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Yep, Steel Sense Scott's talking about. All right, I got to go here, guys. I really want to thank you for great comments. Keisha, thank you for that. Please check out that Why COMEX Won't Default article. I spent a lot of time on a couple of years ago. There's a video that goes with it, Why COMEX Won't Default. Smaulgld. Fiona says, liquor is not money per se, but a great bartering tool. Well, yeah, I guess I wouldn't call it money, but clearly a bartering tool. And again, whether something is money or not is less important as whether it's valuable. Because if something is a good barter tool, it's got good value. In post-Soviet Russia, we call it vodka liquid currency. Très intéressant. Okay. I want to thank everyone for joining me tonight. And yes, thank you, everyone. And we'll see you again tomorrow night. We're going to do nickel tomorrow night. So anyone has nickel knowledge. Tonight was the night to give me your 2 cents. Tomorrow, you're going to give me your nickel knowledge. All right.